Hey guys, welcome back to my channel once again. Kenroy here. Now this is a video that is long overdue. Now in today's video I'll actually be showing you what our garden looked like when we originally bought it a few years ago. Now our garden renovation has been a labor of love and this video is long overdue. Now I did try to document some of what I was doing while I was renovating the garden, however a lot of what was done weren't caught on camera. However, I hope that this video will be able to inspire you that it doesn't matter what your garden looks like, you can actually turn things around and end up taking a garden that looked like a forest and making it into something that looks more like paradise. Now as you can see here, the first thing that we needed to do was to clear all these trees, and I was so grateful to have my neighbour, who funnily enough is a landscape gardener. Now I did manage to borrow some of the tools from my neighbour who actually does this for a living. Now I was a complete novice when it comes to landscaping gardens, so a lot of the tips I was able to get from him. Now I was also able to use YouTube and articles online in order to get some of the information because this was a huge task. Now the initial quotes that I got to actually renovate this garden was around £6,000, which obviously is a huge amount of money. That included materials, clearing all of the rubbish, and of course the landscaping. Now there was no way I was going to spend all of this money, especially after just buying this house. My intentions from the get-go was to do it myself. Now I definitely bit off more than I could chew, as this was the first time I've ever done anything like this. Now as you can see, there's so much rubble, and I think that the trees and the grass and the shrubs, they all mask just how much work needed to be done in this garden. Now this garden has been left derelict for years. According to the neighbours, the people who previously owned this property didn't actually even come out into the garden, it was just left to be a wasteland. Because of this, so many people seem to just use it as a dumping ground, hence the pile of bricks and rubble. Now the amount of stuff that I actually found in here was absolutely dreadful. Now I found things ranging from bricks and pieces of old metal all the way up to roofing slates and tiles, which obviously meant that the neighbours saw it as a dumping ground, as this bit of land wasn't actually being used. Now one of the most challenging things, guys, that I had to do, and one of the biggest tasks after we cut the branches off these trees, was actually to dig out the roots from these trees. Now because they were left unattended, they actually became huge trees with massive root system, and the first thing that we needed to do was actually dig them out. I'm so grateful that I had help from my brother. Although he was working, whenever he was free, after he finished work, he would come around and give me a hand, and I was so grateful for all of his help. Now once we dug up all the roots, we then realized that we needed to get rid of all of the branches at the most cost-effective way possible. Now the first thing that came to mind was to hire a wood chipper, which we did, and really made a difference. We were able to grind all of the tree branches down, and the ones that were too big we would later dispose of at the local recycle center. Once we did that, we then piled it all up into 1-ton bags so that we could figure out what we were going to do with them later. Now there was tons of bricks and rubble in the garden, and as such I needed to figure out how I was going to dispose of them. Now I did use my car to take most of the rubbish to the recycle center, but this would have just been too taxing to actually do this with all of this heavy rubble. Now what I decided to do, and I thought this was very clever at the time, was to dig a massive trench towards the back of the garden and then I would bury all of the rubble that I wouldn't be able to dispose of, and then on top of that I would make a raised bed so that we can plant our vegetables.
Take your time, make each stroke count.
Now we do have a working fireplace, and we decided that we would save some of this wood so that we can actually use it over those cold winter months to actually warm the house. Now once most of the rubble and the wood was cleared, at least moved to one side, we were then able to start doing the leveling process, and this took absolutely ages because there was so much stones and so much rubble within the soil. Now we still had a few ton bags full of the wood chip that we grounded down from the branches, and I decided rather than taking it to the recycle center, to save me some time and energy, I would spread this as a layer before using some topsoil that we ordered to cover it. Now my hope was for this to make a nice organic fertile soil so that when we started to put the grass on top, over the years this would be very nutritious for the actual soil. Now this would then allow me to kill two birds with one stone and would have less to actually go and dispose of.
Oh, he's gone back to his hiding.
Now after we laid that layer of wood chip on top of the ground, we then ordered some topsoil and used that to cover over it, and we left it for a couple of weeks so that it could all bed in and settle down. Now we decided to have a patio area, and the next step was to measure that out, and I did use some of the bricks and some of the rubble that we had as a base for this patio area. We then got some rough stone before using a compactor to actually compact this all down to make it nice and tight, and of course I borrowed a compactor from my neighbor. Now I can't say thanks enough to my neighbor because I was able to borrow his old compactor, which did the job. Now these paving slabs that you see here normally retails for around £6 to £7 each. However, I was able to go online, I think it was Spock at the time, and actually found these. Someone had ordered surplus for when they were doing their garden, and I was able to pick them up for like £2 each, which was a huge saving, and I got more than enough that we needed in order to make this patio area. Now I've never done anything like this, and this was all trial and error, but I'm so happy to know that it all came together well. Now as you can see here, I think Naomi's dance speaks volumes for how thrilled we were with how it looked and the fact that it all came together so nicely. Now the next stage, guys, and this was the exciting part, was to actually start laying the turf, because for so long we've just been looking at the soil. We couldn't wait to actually start seeing some greenery, and we were really excited. Now there were a few options that we could have chosen, but rather than going with the artificial grass, we really wanted to go with the natural look and feel. So we decided to go down the route of getting turf because we thought that would be easier to work with, and as you can see, we'll get the results we're looking for a lot quicker. Now if I'm remembering correctly, this turf that we bought came up to around £250. This was ideal considering that all we then needed to do was to just lay it and water it in, and within a week or two we'll have a nice lush lawn rather than going the route of seeding it. Now I must say that this was very labor intensive, as each one of these rolls actually weighed quite a lot, more than I thought they would. After having them delivered to the front of the house, I had to get the wheelbarrow out and take it all the way to the back, just like everything else, before proceeding to lay it on the ground. Once again, this was very new to me, but I'm so happy with how it turned out. It was really worthwhile, and within a week or two I was able to give it its first cut. All we needed to do was make sure we water it in the morning and in the evening, and I was really happy with how it turned out. Now we had some tree stumps which were separating us from our neighbours, so I had to dig those out before using a chainsaw to actually cut them out the ground before we can erect a fence to separate us from our neighbour. Now this was done some weeks later, as I had to actually buy a chainsaw in order to do this. Thankfully this only costed me like around £50, and it was well worth it. The trickiest bit was actually disposing of these stumps, which I had to chop them into smaller blocks and of course put them in my car and take them up to the recycle centre before we were able to get rid of them. Now I must say, all of this wouldn't have been possible without this woman right here. This is my mom. She's the one who encouraged us to actually make the move and to actually buy this place despite the condition of the garden, and I'm so glad that we actually did that. Now here you can see the final fence being put up between my neighbour and I, which really gave us that privacy and made it feel like our own little private paradise. One of the very last major bits of work that I did in this garden was the walkway which led up to the actual garden. Now this had seen better days, so what I decided to do was to use some decking boards to make a frame before filling in the walkway with some pebbles and a few finishing touches, and voila, it was all done and dusted. I also made a raised bed out of concrete posts, and this was what I always wanted to do over the area which we had put all that rubble, so that we can plant our vegetables, and I'm really happy with how all of this turned out. I'll be sure to put a list of how much our total spend was, but suffice to say all of this came in at under £1,000, which is absolutely incredible considering if I was to pay someone to do this, it would have costed us more than £6,000. Now there's still a few bits and pieces that we're trying to do in the garden, and most of this is cosmetic, and I know that as the season go on things will change. We're still thinking about getting a greenhouse and adding a shed in the garden. I hope that this video has been inspiring to you, because it goes to show that no garden is a write-off. If you got the vision, you can turn any space into something spectacular. And if you want to save yourself some money, why not try to do it yourself? If you like this video and it has been helpful for you, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to this channel. Also, what experience have you had with doing up your garden? Please let us know in the comments down below. Perhaps you've bought a house or have been put off from buying a house because of the garden. Let me know, perhaps after watching this video your minds have been changed and you'll be willing to give it a go. Maybe that garden that isn't ideal for you right now could be transformed into something worthwhile. As always, this is Kenroy saying, I'll see you when you see me. Take care.